So you've seen all the cool YouTube guitarists making some absolutely killer sounds with their pro-looking, expensive tube amps and their gigantic 4x12s and their absolutely amazing video quality. And now you're probably thinking to yourself, shit, I want a tube amp too. Well, here are 3 things that you may want to consider that may be quite elusive if you're doing your information gathering from YouTube. Number 1, power and volume. If you've done your recommended dose of research on tube amplifiers, you'll be aware of 2 concepts. The typical wattages in which amplifiers come in, which very loosely relates to how loud an amplifier can get, and the fact that tube amplifiers sound better as you turn up the volume, especially in high gain scenarios. And therein lies the biggest dilemma. If you want your shiny new amp for some killer bedroom tones, then you can't really crank the volume past 2 without disturbing the neighbors. So it makes sense to go for a lower wattage amp like a 15 watt. But you also don't want to spend your money on an amp which wouldn't be heard once you finally found that one drummer in your town with whom you can jam or gig. But guess what? There is one magic feature that will save you from your predicament, and that's the built-in power soak. Now you can narrow down your choice to a select few amps which include this feature, but strangely, they also tend to be lower wattage amps. Well, let me to some extent dispel your struggle, but I'm gonna have to start with a bit of nerdy background. An amp's volume or post gain knob isn't actually directly controlling volume. It's actually controlling the amount of power that is fed to your power amp section. This means that you could reach the maximum effective volume output of your amp well before you turn that knob all the way to 11, especially if you're already feeding it a very pushed signal from the preamp. The fact that the knob controls power and not volume directly means that the relationship between you turning the knob and the output volume is actually logarithmic in nature. Or more precisely, it probably follows the inverse square law, which means that to get twice the volume, you need 4 times the power. This means that the output volume will start to increase very rapidly at first, and then as you keep turning the knob, the increase will start to fall off. This means 2 things. First of all, when seeing a demo of an amp or trying out an amp yourself at lower post gain settings, don't be fooled by the fact that the amp is only at 2 and it's already so loud, because it's not going to get 5 times louder when you turn it to 10. And secondly, even if you significantly cut the wattage, the amp will still be pretty loud, even at 1 or even half a watt. If you don't have these 2 things in mind, you could easily go for an option which is suboptimal for you, and you could end up paying more for it in the process. Oh, and don't plan to rely on emulated outputs. They're usually crap, and they defeat the purpose of getting an amplifier which is complete control over your sound, most of which comes from the choice of cabinet, the speakers you're using, the mic you're using, and the mic placement, all of which is out of your control when using a simulated out. Instead of going astray and prioritizing these functions, which in my opinion are mostly gimmicks, just get a power soak. They aren't that expensive. This one I have from Bagheera costs only £70 and it works great. I can set my amp as loud as I want without using a power soak, without turning any of the tubes off, and I can have very, very precise control over the volume that comes out of the speaker. Not sponsored, by the way, but hey Bagheera, if you're one of my 10 viewers, feel free to send me shit, okay? Thanks. Oh, and guess what? You don't even have to connect the speaker. It has a simulated output, which obviously is shit. Sorry Bagheera, you still send me shit, right? But anyway, yeah, the first point is just find an amp you love, and if you want to play it in your bedroom, get a power soak. So point number 2 is tone. And I've alluded to this a bit in my first point, and it's basically to do with the fact that your choice of cabinet, the speaker, the microphone choice, and the microphone positioning have much more of an effect on your sound than the actual amplifier. This is mostly for those of you who are trying to decide on an amp based on YouTube reviews, and basically just a warning that the sound you hear doesn't necessarily mean all that much, especially when you consider that sound in a mix. So if you're in that position, my advice to you would be to find a few reviewers whom you really trust based on other things, and then listen to what they say in combination with what the amp actually sounds like. And number 3, consider if a physical amplifier is actually what you want. If your plan is to play at home and occasionally jam or gig at a secondary location, consider your journey, especially if you're not driving there. The amplifier head alone will weigh something like 10 kilograms, and then obviously you're going to have at least one guitar with you, and since you have an amp, you're not going anywhere without your pedal board and all the pedals that accompany it, and that's another 7 kilograms or so. plus the additional complexity and cost of building your own pedal board and powering your pedals, and then you also get shit like this. Carrying all that to your jam or gig location will not only be heavy, but even more importantly, very uncomfortable. By the time you get there, you'll just want to lie down, and all you'll be thinking of is how much your journey back will suck. And don't forget, this is considering you've already compromised on not using your own cabinet. You can get some sick tones and insane flexibility from a modern floor sim unit, which might weigh less and maybe even cost less than your pedal board alone. The trade-off is, of course, losing that mostly intangible benefit of having the satisfaction of a hands-on or real experience. So that's all the suggestions I have for you today. Let me know which amp you bought in the comment section below. See ya.